Welcome all. We're glad to have you for another session of EDUCAUSE Demo Day, AI-enabled teaching and learning tools. My name is Jason Martin, and I'll be your host for this session. We encourage you to use the chat to share comments and ask questions for our presenters from Harmonize Learning. If you would like to view closed captioning, you can click the Show Captions button at the bottom of the Zoom room. And just a prompt as we are beginning our session, we are asking you to say hello in the chat and let Alan and Marcus know where you're calling from, and maybe let them know what your role is as well. A good representation there. So we appreciate your time. With that, I'll hand things over to you, Marcus and Alan.
Sounds good. All right. So my name is Marcus. I'm one of the owners, one of the founders of Harmonize. I have with me Alan as well, who's the head of all things sales, in case you have any questions along those lines. Wanted to outline just a quick agenda before I start screen sharing to give you a feel for what we're going to cover today. So first, I'll have to give you a little bit of a context and introduction into what Harmonize is. So we'll start there. So when I start, and I'm not immediately talking about AI, I'm just laying the scene a little bit. And then we're going to roll into sort of AI-assisted coaching for students with some guardrails on it. We'll talk about what that means. And then we will back from the student coaching into how do we support the instructor to make sure they can set all of this up correctly. How can we make sure that they are clear enough building rubrics, building instructional sets and such like that as well. So then we'll dig a little bit into where we go next with AI, and we'll take questions always. So please, I would much rather have your questions come in, and even if we tangent into different directions, totally fine. That'd make for a way more interesting session than just me as a talking head. So without further ado, I'm going to screen share and give you an intro to Harmonize. I'm going to do it inside of Canvas, but it works in the main 4 LMSs, Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Moodle. I just am gonna demo on Canvas because generally there's a slightly larger population of Canvas users in the room than not. So I'm gonna go ahead and share now. All right, so what is Harmonize? Start there. Harmonize is a tool that allows you to do better discussion forums, better assignments. We're launching peer review in about 4 weeks. So anything that you're needing to actually collaborate with your students, either student to student or student to instructor, can we make those tools work better? Because right now, the LMSs are almost exclusively text. There are some tools to be able to do non-text based things, but when you're looking to keep things authentic, you're looking to sort of handle the integrity side of things, and you're sort of trying to sidestep the AI, how do you have to get away from text? And so that's what we're all about. We're all about how do we let students and instructors share and communicate in whatever way they want from a UDL perspective, and also just in sort of that sort of combating AI mode. So what I have on my screen, I'm going to march through a few examples to lay the seed, and then we'll jump into some of the AI tools that we have for students and instructors. So what you see on your screen here is one of our discussion forums, multiple due dates with auto grading if necessary. And when the students are authoring content, we are filling up a gallery of their content for their fellow students and their instructors to see. So you can come in, you picture we're doing basically the Quality Matters introduction style topic. How do we do that in a way that lets them do whatever it is that they want? So the students come in and then they choose where they want to participate based on some teaser about the content being authored. So in this case, Laverne uploaded some wooden blocks, a picture of that, and talked about budgeting, and that's why she's in this class. And inside of this dedicated space to the student work is where the conversation happens, where it can be simple text back and forth reactions, or we can start to drift away from text into drawing on images or doing timestamp commentary or on videos or whatever that may require. And the way students use the tool is they'll come in, they'll participate, and then they'll go back out and choose the next place that they want to participate. That might be here into this because it has an intriguing video. It also has a screen share presentation going on, which was all handled directly inside of Harmonize, so they don't have to leave the LMS to do it. And so they can go as media dense as they want, or they can go as text dense as they want. And when the critiques and the conversation happen, it can be, like I was saying, it can be, I'm actually drawing on your slides. In this case, I just scribbled on them, but ideally it would be more along the lines of calling out commentary and saying, hey, in your PowerPoint presentation that you shared, here's where things are sort of going off the rails, what have you. And then other people can come in and participate and comment as well as they're going through it all. This is the example of a discussion forum. The same thing comes into play if you're doing it just for assignments. So you don't have to be doing just discussion forums. It looks almost exactly the same on purpose when you're doing assignments, where here's a case where a biology instructor was asking students to do free-form drawings on their iPads for a particular assignment. In this case, I, as the instructor, can see everybody, but the students can't see each other's work. And then the students can come in and take a look at what it was that they were authoring and sharing. And then they can draw on and critique or respond with video or whatever it is. So laying the scene here of this idea of that we are basically a workspace inside the LMS that allows whatever type of authoring we want. It doesn't have to be just a text-based discussion or a turning in a Word doc or something along those lines. So now the question is, how does AI incorporate into this? So first and foremost, we're encouraging those UDL principles so that we are making it sort of a safe space, or I should say at least more AI resilient, because it's not as easy for AI to do things like generate images that are clearly maybe hand-drawn by the student, or can it do videos of the student? It's getting there, but not quite there yet. So what we often see our instructors doing are documenting the process with their students, like, hey, why don't you actually come on video and do a reflection of your learning, those types of things. But coming into a discussion as a student, I will come in here and I'll show you what it looks like to actually participate in one of these discussions. I'm actually going to switch into a student view so you can see what the student view looks like. All right, so for those that are unfamiliar with Canvas now, I am in student view. The stuff that's in the center pane here is Harmonize. The stuff that's on the left is Canvas. And you can see that now I am looking at what my instructor's done. They've actually recorded a video. They've built an activity for me to participate. They've embedded some YouTube videos. They've built a rubric to be really clear with what they want their students to do. So this is a really well-structured, clearly defined activity for the student to participate in. Just a quick note on the media, we do auto caption all the videos. We're actually moving into audio descriptions for the upcoming Title II requirements and things like that. But when I, as a student, come in, I have a post I've been working on, it's auto-saved. The question is, how do I actually get my first round of feedback? What we set out to solve here is this idea that when students are getting ready to participate, those students that need their help the most are the least likely to reach out for help. So can we let AI be the first round of feedback for the students so that they can do as much improvement as they can before they then turn it in for peer review or for their fellow students just to comment on or for the instructor to grade? Can we let them iterate with AI with guardrails until such time as they actually are comfortable that they've done what they can do? So here I've written a post, wasn't a great post, in response to the instructor's prompt, and we have this ability for students to opt in and ask for AI feedback. What we're doing here is that we are centering all of the feedback we are giving on the instructor's rubric. So what you're looking at are the 4 rubric dimensions that the instructor built of what they care about in the assignment. And we are showing the student how they fare, how much room for improvement is possible on each of these rubric criteria. We are basically using AI to examine the instructions, the rubric, the student content, and then giving them a feel for, if you want to spend more time, where should you spend more time? So let me go ahead and make this a little bit better. I'm going to grab a piece of work that I've improved a little bit in this regard. And so what we're seeing in the data is that students come in and they're like, okay, fair enough. I'm going to go do some more work on this. In this case, I'm going to do that work real quickly by cutting and pasting some things in. And I'm also going to record a reflection video to tack on to this as well. So I can be like, okay, this was interesting. I wrote my first post. The feedback I got said X, Y, and Z. Here's what I did to go think about it. I went and researched this. I researched that. I went and grabbed a couple examples from the web. I reworked what I was doing and then made my second submission. So now I'm a little more confident in what's going on, et cetera. So they can record as much as the instructor wants, up to an hour here for them to be able to do that reflection. And they could have done that reflection in many ways. They could have done it in video, they can do it in audio, they can go ahead and just screen share and actually screen share an essay or something like that. But then they can come back in and be like, okay, well, how am I doing now? Let me rescan my work. At this point, we're doing one step further with AI. We're like, okay, we already have your initial results. We now know what your first version was and what your second version was, and we're going to give you feedback now based on whether you're getting better. So you can see, okay, there's very little room for improvement on 3 of the rubric criteria. The trend on those was that they were increasing, but there's still much room for improvement on the critical engagement front. So speaking of guardrails here, we're doing this all based on the instructor's rubric, because if we just sent them off to AI, who knows what the AI is going to tell them. They could definitely get some feedback. It may steer them in directions that the instructor is not particularly concerned with. Who knows? But we are also creating some productive struggle here, because we aren't actually telling the student what is wrong. We are just pointing them back at the instructor's rubric so that they can read what the rubric says, determine where to focus, and then go do their revisions before they publish. So I'm going to pause there and maybe just summarize what we're doing and then see if there's any questions on this particular coaching aspect of things, which is we are only coaching on the instructor's rubric. We are coaching only to create productive struggle. We want the students to spend more time with their content, with the instructor's rubric in front of them. So they're like, okay, here's where I should focus. Here's where I'm doing revisions. Here's where I'm working. And we are not telling them what's wrong. We are simply pointing them back to the rubric and then giving them trend lines to be able to see where are they actually making gains or not, until such time as they're ready to publish and they can go ahead and submit this in.
So Marcus, we did have a question come in the chat. Did the instructors see the process or only the final submission?
Great question. They see the whole thing. So the instructors will come in, they will see every scan the student did, what score we gave them, and so that they can then come through and sort of see how things evolve. Because it's very important that the instructor see in their grading interface, if they are grading, or just in the activity view if they're not grading, okay, the student did actually spend 3 different revisions on this, and here's what they made better, and here's maybe where they didn't make something better, because then the instructor can swoop in and play that sort of much more personal coach of like, okay, fantastic, I see you did XYZ, but on the 4th rubric criteria, it looks like your mechanics and clarity didn't get a whole lot better. There's this writing lab resource available, and or would you like some help with that? I can help you figure out how to coach yourself better on mechanics and grammar. Or in this case, it's actually like, okay, critical engagement hasn't happened, which makes sense because I'm participating in a discussion. I actually haven't gone and engaged with my peers yet for them to do it.
Well, the next question that came in here, does Harmonize have a tool to help instructors create assignment rubrics, which will, I think that's a good segue.
That is a good segue. I see the next question come in as well, so as I was waiting. So let me answer that one and then we'll come back to it. The answer is yes, but I'll back into that in a moment. The instructor does see the time codes of when these scans happened, so that they can see if it was like scan 1 minute, scan 20 seconds, scan 20 seconds, scan 20 seconds, made it better. Unlikely that the student pulled off revisions that quickly, but could be. And so we don't say, yeah, definitely AI or not. We don't try to get into the detection game. We do integrate with Turnitin. If you are providing that tool to your instructors, they can use the AI detection model, but I put great caution upon that and encourage you to be careful because they have false positives and false negatives. So, but yeah, we show you all of the information so you can try to get a feel. And while we're on the topic of revisions, what we see in the data is that students spend, if they scan just once, they spend about 8% more time with their content, making revisions. And what we also see as they scan, 2, 3, 4 times, it goes up. It goes up a couple percent for every single time that they're scanning, which makes sense because they're scanning, they're working, they're scanning, they're working. You would expect it to take more time. What's interesting is that the students often will track with it until such time as they don't see these green arrows anymore. So they basically either have improved as much as they can in a self-guided process, or improved as much as they're willing to, and they're not making any more revisions. And then they sort of back away, turn in the work, and then it's time for the instructor to come in to be able to provide that sort of additional critique as they go. All right, and so the great question came in is like, do we use AI to help build the tools for the instructor? Because we have a lot of users of Harmonize, and when we look at the instructional content that the instructors are building, most of it does not have a rubric attached, which is required for this. Most of it is not incredibly well-structured content. Most instructors are not trained as instructional designers. Some of them naturally fall into it. They have a natural brilliance. Others, you can tell that they're struggling or just don't have enough time, frankly, because they're all underpaid and overworked to be able to actually really define every single assignment perfectly. And so this is where AI comes in as an instructor assist, because we have to have a well-defined assignment in order to be able to coach the students safely. I'm going to leave the student view and come back into the instructor view to show how we got here. I'm going to go into an empty assignment and show you how we set one of these up. All right. So when we walk the instructor through setup, we are asking them to basically just tell us what you're trying to teach. And we are going to help structure an assignment for you. We expect most instructors, like I said, are not trained as instructional designers. So we are going to ask them a Bloom's taxonomy level. I saw there were several instructional designers there. We're going to ask them the Bloom's level. But if they don't know what Bloom's level is, we call it a complexity level, which I know is arguable. It's not necessarily true that, Bloom's level at the base of the pyramid is not necessarily less complex, but it's the closest we could come up to communicate to an instructor. Like, if what we're doing feels too hard for your students, back off a level. And then see how it goes. We start them off at the apply level of Bloom's as the default, and they can change it to any of the level of Bloom's. And then we ask them what they're teaching. So in this case, we were talking about the causes of the Civil War and how that relates to modern day politics. I wanted a reflection video on top of the written content. You can put whatever you want in here, basically. This is kind of a brain dumping ground. We call this tool Harmonize Brainstorm because it's really about guiding the instructor to something that is what they want to teach, but more well-defined than what they would accomplish on their own, or frankly, just quicker than what they would accomplish on their own. Highly encourage them to put in learning objectives, as many as they have, because then we can make alignment between what we are building and what they're trying to teach. All right, so now we're going to turn up an activity for them. Because there were a lot of instructional designers in the audience, I'm going to dwell a little bit on what we're doing here from a guardrail perspective. We have, at each of the Bloom's level, we have anywhere between 10 to 12 known instructional strategies that instructional designers have in textbooks and are common for use. We will try to slot what they're trying to teach into this activity that we're building, and then we will generate it for them. They may love that instructional strategy and start to work with it. They may hate that instructional strategy. You can see here that this one is actually breaking them up into groups to do a discussion and analyze and propose strategies for persistent issues in today's society. And maybe I'm like, I hate that. They can just say generate something different, and it will then turn around and it'll use a different instructional strategy and generate it for them. So I'm seeing this one also picked a group activity with a little bit of team reflection and peer review. And I'm like, you know what, make that not a group activity. I want my students working alone before they go into peer review phase. Great, we will then rebuild that activity for them. So they can drift away from some of the guardrails if they do a lot of initial feedback, but we are trying to get them into a mode that at least starts with a solid instructional strategy and then lets them work from there. They could go back and edit that guidance. Like I said, too complicated, go change the complexity level. Otherwise, pick any one of these that felt close. Really important that we keep the instructor in the loop. They click review and edit this. We drop it into a text editor for them to edit with proper accessible content in terms of ordered list and subheadings and such, so that they can then come through and make any tweaks that they want. Because maybe we got it 85, 90% of the way there for them to pick it up as well. Right. At this point, the instructor has the same tools that I was showing you earlier with the student. We highly encourage our instructors to add a little personality to these. So maybe at this point, I record a video and be like, okay, the Civil War seems like it was a long time ago, but now we're going to map it onto modern day politics. I really need you all to be super polite to each other because this conversation could get interesting. Remember the guidelines that we have for all of our discussions, keeping it real, keeping it authentic, but also keeping it polite. And let's dive in. So whatever I want to say to them as the instructor, I can do. And then I like mine, just a pet peeve of mine, I like my recording to be at the top. So I'm going to move my recording to the top. Now I have my activity. And then I'm going to roll into setting up a rubric. So when I go ahead and actually, Alan, I saw some questions flowing in. Is there anything that I need to address before I go into rubric generation?
Yeah, we addressed the first one. The second one, when you generate the assignment text, can you utilize Brightspace Creator Plus templates?
Currently, no. We have to maintain, like LTI, the integration between us and the LMS doesn't allow copying over of those template types. We do see people will sometimes define an activity on the LTI on a page and then lead into the LTI assignment so that they can use those templates for the instructions. But right now, if you're doing the instructions inside of our editor, it is just a standard text editor. Okay, let's go into rubric setup. Okay, so I didn't have to set up a rubric. However, you can't use coaching if we don't have a rubric, because we are not going to make the judgment of what good and bad means without the instructor's approval. So they could have carried on and just used that assignment and let the students participate. What we're doing right here is that we are investigating that activity, and we are trying to ascertain what are the main 4 things the instructor is focused on, i.e. the left side of the rubric. We will pull those out and present them to the instructor. Can see here that comprehension and analysis, connection and application, it pulled out a few things. All of these are editable. They can be deleted if you don't like them. You can add additional ones to build the rubric. This is probably the most important step, because if these are incorrect in any way, the rubric's not going to be accurate. Well, hence, we put the instructor on this page to be able to say, okay, I get it. I've reviewed it all, and now I'm ready to turn this into a full-blown rubric. In this case, 4x4, because I didn't add any additional things across the left-hand side. And so now we've mapped out what, for this particular rubric criteria, what does excellent mean? And once again, instructor in the loop, give them a pencil to be able to edit it, because this is what we are going to use both to put in for grading into the LMS and in Canvas, at least, to map it to outcomes and such, to do the whole alignment. So it actually becomes a full-blown Canvas rubric, and the other LMSs, we make it available for grading. So it's super important that this be accurate, even if you're not using the coaching feature. And then, especially because of the coaching feature, we are going to use these to guide the students towards success. You'll see we just broke up the points evenly between what they were wanting to do. I can save the rubric, and now I have published content to be able to say, okay, here's what's going on. There's my multiple due dates I had set up, the video introduction I did, that activity, a simplified version of the rubric with the full rubric accessible here, and now it's ready to publish and for the students to participate in. And because this is Canvas, if I actually reload this, you'll see it becomes a full-blown Canvas rubric across the bottom of the page, where it now says, okay, here's the rubric that we put into the rubric section for you, hooked up to the assignment. It's available in SpeedGrader. Saw a question come in about the points being editable. Yeah, I didn't highlight that, but yeah, you can edit both the points. You can edit the header of the rubric. You can edit the body of each of the cells of the rubric to make it exactly what you want when you're going into that process. So all of these tools were built to drive us to a full-fledged, clean description of what the student needs to achieve, so that the student knows, great, from a clarity perspective, but also so that we can do coaching and so that they can do assessment with the rubric as well. So we're trying to remove some of the bias from the grading process, because we made it easy to build a rubric. So even if you're not using the coaching, we have instructors that are building the rubrics simply so that they can not have to fight with the rubric tools inside the LMS, because it's slow to build, but also so that they can remove some bias from the grading as well. All right. Talk a little bit about, I mentioned the effects of that coaching process. I thought it was interesting. I just had some data pulled on the amount of time spent. This is based on discussion topics. And so if you look at how much time does the student in general across tens of thousands of posts, more than that probably. The average student spends 12 minutes on a discussion post, which I just thought was fascinating in general. This is without our coaching. And then you can see the numbers start to climb depending on how many times they're using the coach until you start to get to the outliers. Most students are not using the coach 7 times. Some are, but you can see the number of minutes increase. And so we go to 13 minutes, to 15, to 17, to 22, to 25. So as the students are spending more and more time centered on that rubric, they are choosing to jump in. About 20% of the students are opting in to use this. It's an opt-in by the student. And what's fascinating to me is that when we talk to instructors and we're training them, we're like, try actually telling your students it's okay. And bam, does the number shoot up. So I highlight that because of the anxiety around AI use in students. Even though it says it's in the LMS, it says request AI feedback, there's still a lot of anxiety in students about whether they can use AI feedback, even though it is built into the LMS or not. As soon as the instructor says it's okay, the percentage in those classes shoots way up as well. So just kind of an interesting side tidbit there. Okay, let's talk a little bit. Well, actually, any questions on this before I wrote into a little bit of what are we using AI for next? So I'll give a moment or two. And Alan, do you feel like was there anything I missed that I didn't cover there that perhaps I should have?
No, nothing comes top of mind.
Okay, let's talk about what's next. So we're doing formalized peer review now. We solved the problem of having to do assignments for instructors. We're handling that real time, so the instructors don't have to chase down students. We solved the problem of grading them. We made it super easy to see everything that happens in the peer review process. So that process is now easy to flow through. The thing we are adding from an AI perspective is that one of the main complaints about peer review, much like the assignment I was just faced with, many students don't know how to do it. So their first attempt at a peer review might frankly be terrible. And that causes a lot of frustration in the peer review process because students get a phoned in peer review that's not really helpful to them. They spent a lot of time peer reviewing their peers and then they got sort of a mediocre response. So we're using the same coaching mechanism to define a rubric for what is a good peer review. And then when the students come in, this one is going to be less optional. The instructor can turn it off, but if it's on, the student will actually go through at least one scan of their work and see how it measures up against the rubric that defines what good peer review means. So things like, hey, are you being constructive in your examples? Is your tone good? Are you actually covering all 4 of the rubric criteria that the instructor asked you to cover? Because if they didn't require a quantitative review, you still want them to cover all 4 of them. We can look at that at AI and say, okay, yeah, they covered 3, or there's room for improvement. They didn't cover all 4, those types of things. So that the peer review process runs more smoothly. We find more value for the students by giving a more thorough peer review from their peers. That's the next thing we're working on. That's going to come out later this summer. And then from there, we are talking to our clients. There's a couple different ideas floating around. An AI assistant, a teaching assistant to help the instructor find the key points in the discussion where maybe it's worthwhile for them to jump in and facilitate, like, hey, here's a thread that's going off the rails and has some anger in it. Here's a thread that's just got a lot of content and a lot of sort of varying opinions you could jump in on. Or, hey, here's someone who hasn't heard from you or their fellow students in a while, and you might want to jump in and chit chat with them. Type of thing. So that's one of the things we're talking to our customers about. Is this something instructors would like or not? So those are the areas that we're looking at of how do we take the existing best practices and just make them easier for instructors, because most instructors are teaching either a large load or don't have enough time, have a million tasks on their plate. So can we ease those sort of best practices to make them more probable to happen, easier to happen, et cetera. All right, large breath. Any questions that come up? Anything you want me to come back and revisit? Happy to even talk about just some of the multimedia tools as well for them. Because as we're waiting for questions, one of the main things that people work with us on is like, how do we actually make our assessments more AI resilient? And so we do whole training sessions around like, well, since you have screen share available to you, like if I'm actually creating a post inside of this as a student, if I want to share my screen, I just click the share screen button. I go pick whatever I want to share and put it straight into Harmonize. So we're making it easier to generate assessments for the students that are harder to cheat at, frankly. Like they're not just text-based. Let's document the process. Let's do reflections. Let's create private journaling spaces as well. So whatever it is that the student needs to be able to author the tool that the instructor is asking of them, then they can share their knowledge in whatever way. We've seen instructors share ChatGPT sessions where the students are using ChatGPT and screen sharing and talking about the experience as they're going through. We see them screen share essays and actually highlight and talk about the essay in real time as they're going through. In about 2 weeks, we're releasing tools that allow students to critique each other's Word docs and PowerPoint so they can actually highlight different sections of them as well. Extremely hard for AI to do as of yet. So allows there to be a more sense of authenticity and frankly, better feedback and better peer critique inside of the discussions. And a final, I won't call it maybe AI, but I'll call it machine learning piece that's inside of Harmonize, is that we actually do what's called engagement insights. So we are using machine learning to help the instructor determine which students need their help most. So I don't call it AI because AI often invokes this idea of generative AI, but let me go ahead, and since we have a little bit of time left, I'll pull up a slide we use to teach our instructors. We will actually pull up a list of students for the instructor. We don't show this to the students, but we will pull up a list for the instructor to actually show them, here are your students who are at high risk of dropping out of your class. We're doing this based on real data. We ran machine learning training on this to see, okay, what behaviors correlate to dropout, and therefore can we warn the instructor early that this is going to happen. This is before all of the learning management, all the LLMs came out. So this is our own AI, our own system to be able to do this. But we list those students out, and then we give the instructor very clear English descriptions of why this student is at risk and how basically it's gotten worse over time. And so these come into the instructor. When they come into Harmonize, it opens up in their face to be able to say, hey, here's 5 students you might want to pay attention to, because most of your student body is on track, but some are not as well. And so can we give you that quick time to come in, drop them an email, tag them in another post, try to pull them back into the discussion as well, so that you as the instructor, if you're going to spend 10 minutes in the class, you're spending it in a way where it's most needed, so that you're trying to pull that student back into the discussion in some way as well. A lot of instructors don't dig too deep into this data. They actually just look at the previous screen here, which was this one. And we will just, when they come in, we pop it in their face. Hey, here's 5 students you should look at. And they go, oh yeah, you're right. And so a lot of the feedback we got was from instructors, like they have a gut feel of what's happening in their class. But when we actually show them the list, they said that it actually gives them the confidence to reach out to that student, because it's not just like a gut feel. It's like, oh, the system said as well, that jives with what they know about their students. Therefore, they dropped the student an email, made it easy, pointed them in the direction of like email as they go through, try to pull those students back in. And we're monitoring around 200 things along this front, a lot of them around when did they engage, how many of their peers are they engaging with, what is the quality of their content, all of those types of things, because those were the factors that actually correlated with students eventually dropping the class if they didn't do well on them. We will highlight improvements as well. I just like to point that out so it doesn't all come negative of like, wow, you're not doing great. If they are getting better on some of those metrics, we will list that as well, so they can do a nice little compliment sandwich of like, I saw you doing better on this, but still could do some work on this. Do you need some help? All right, saw a question about grading come in. Yes, we do have a tool to help with grading. We integrate in Canvas, we integrate directly with SpeedGrader, and we put all of that information front and center for the student, for the instructor to see. We do have an auto grading system to be able to say, okay, here, if you want, you can just auto grade based on participation. So 45 points if you get your post in and it has a certain number of words and it's on time, you know, whatever half of 45 is for each of the comments if they get them in on time, and whatever LMS you're using. I'm in Canvas. It integrates with SpeedGrader to do rubric grading and show you everything that's happened. But it also, if you're in the other LMSs, we have that as well. And so this is where now I can kind of, as an instructor, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, as I say. This is not just a report of what the student did and what they've read and how they were doing on that pacing, but it actually is the live discussion. So if I wanted to leave and facilitate the discussion or leave feedback on their video or something, this is actually the live discussion here, and I can do so directly in line while I'm grading. I drew on one of their images already. I recorded a video. I can do that privately to Laverne. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for the instructor to facilitate these things that are happening. So the perfect workflow is a student turns something in after they've done a few revisions with AI. It pops in here. If the student had scanned with AI, it would be right here, view AI feedback results. It would not be grayed out because they'd actually done it. The student has not. And then they could view all the revisions of what the student went through, their Turnitin score, and then leave feedback, move on, so that they're not dealing with that sort of first line of, this is something you could have, if you'd looked at my rubric, really handled on your own. Instead, now they're dealing with the meatier issues of like, you did improve the things that you could on your own. So now the good use of my time is to jump in on those areas that you were unable to improve. So I can then provide that really quality mentoring as well. See, a question came in of what is the accuracy of predicting students dropping out? We are very careful to say that we are not predicting student dropout. we are highlighting behaviors that often correlate to dropping out, because we can tell you that a student is not engaging with their peers. We can tell you that they've had a behavior shift, that used to always be on time and now they're running late. And often those things correlate to dropping out. And that's constantly training on it. So those models are reflecting what the correlation are. And some of those behaviors are more strongly correlated with dropping out, some are weaker, and therefore they contribute to the overall risk score at different levels. But we don't call it predicting dropout, because a student could have complete trash from a peer review, interaction perspective, and they're just a genius. So we might label them high risk and say, here's the concern, they're not engaging with their peers. The instructor is the only one that sees this, because the instructor might look at that and be like, yeah, but that kid's a genius. Yeah, his social skills, not great, but he's crushing my class. He's got 100% on everything he's done. So yeah, he's not exhibiting all these behaviors we expect from a good student, interacting with each other and getting their work in on time, but does not matter. So we kind of try to walk that line carefully of, it's not a prediction that they're going to drop out, but they are exhibiting behaviors that often correlate to students dropping out. We figure the worst case there is this instructor reaches out to the student and says, hey, I saw you weren't engaging with your peers, would love to see you engaging, and especially because you're a genius, I'd love to see you participating. You would really elevate this discussion, not because that student's going to drop out, just because we highlighted the behavior for the instructor that they weren't engaging very well with their peers. That was quite a mouthful. Hopefully that helped clarify what we were doing there. So I like to think of this as a workspace that enables student and instructors to communicate using best UDL principles, right? Keep it authentic, keep it non-text based, let people express themselves as they want, let them express themselves in ways that are hard for AI to replicate, at least today. Give them AI boosts where they need it, but don't do that in a way that takes the learning process away. And therefore, we're hopefully freeing up time for the instructor to be more productive as a facilitator, and also for the students to get their best foot forward, to kind of tamp down some of that anxiety of, I'm participating with my peers. Do I belong here? Can I get some initial feedback and revisions in before I actually submit my work? All right. I think we are coming close to the end of time, so I'm not going to talk about anything else. I'm just going to see if there's any questions, and then we can, if we don't have any questions, we can wrap up a couple minutes early. So give people a moment or two. Also to remind you that Jason put out a demo session poll that you're welcome to answer. It should have been popping up somewhere on your screen, and you hopefully moved it out of the way and can vote on it as well. But don't forget to do that. Putting my sales hat on as opposed to my demo hat for a moment. We believe strongly in these tools. We will let your university sign up for a free pilot semester, use it as much as you want. From our pilot to customer, we have an 85% success rate. So 85% of the people who try Harmonize end up adopting it at their institutions. So we just let the tool speak for itself. If you are interested in what we do, we have a free pilot program. Like I said, Alan, if you don't mind, I should have prepped you for this, but drop the free pilot link out into the chat so people have it. You can sign up. We'll set up a demo, walk you through what it looks like, answer any questions, and then yeah, it's kind of an unlimited use because we want you to put it through its paces and make sure it works for you and your school. Okay. Excellent. I don't see any more questions coming through. Alan, is there anything else you wished I could highlight before we turn it back over to Jason?
Nothing comes to mind.
Excellent. All right, Jason, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for your questions. A couple things in the chat there. Please feel free to complete the in-session survey, as Marcus mentioned. Also, feel free to peruse the resources and recordings from Harmonize session today, which recording will be posted shortly. And the remainder of our sessions as well have recordings, and or our final session starts in about 5 minutes for the day. We want to thank you for a great day overall. And also want to encourage you to register for the next demo day, which is on LMS platforms on May 6th, so a week from tomorrow. Other than that, thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time, and take care. We'll see you at the next one.
Okay, thanks, everybody.